Welcome to On the Edge with Deneen Dias. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to my friend Kalil at CPAcom. Kalil, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Deneen, and hi, everyone. My name is Kalil Merhib. I am the Vice President of Growth and Client Services at CPAcom, and it's great to be here today with you, Deneen.
Thank you for joining me today. Well, what I'd really like to dive into today, Kalil, is CPAcom's thinking, and I've seen a lot of the positioning. You're coming out. We've done a lot around CAS, and you and I have worked together for years, almost 10 years, I think, to help firms build a CAS practice. But there's this new thinking that CPAcom is bringing to the discussion. I think you're kind of calling it CAS 2.0. Before you dive into that, Kalil, let me ask everybody, if you have questions, please put it in the question section and we'll address them. So go ahead, Kalil. Fill us in on some of the new thinking, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it, over the last decade plus, the category of CAS has evolved quite a bit, right? And I think that even what CAS stands for, so, client accounting services, now client advisory services, as that category continues to evolve. And I think that just really speaks to the new opportunities we're seeing emerge as this category and service line for firms has continued to professionalize, and more firms recognize the opportunity not only for growth and of revenue, but also the value they're able to bring to their clients and what it really means to the firm and client relationship when you start the conversation with the underpinning of business, which is accounting, right? And so as that has evolved, CPAcom, playing a key role over the last 10 or plus years, has also, realized that we are at a point now where there's many more firms in the category at many places in the journey, and there is, an appetite to continue to evolve and think about what this category looks like going forward. And so CAS 2.0 is really that leadership in bringing the profession, the rethinking on the business model, validating what's worked very well for the growth in CAS, but also what new opportunities exist and how CAS plays a role in the trusted business advisor relationship between firms and clients really is that foundation.
Yeah, and I think it is needed. As I've talked to firms and I've listened to where they're at, I can in my head already kind of know where they're at. They're just getting started. Sometimes they've struggled, they've started and had some hiccups along the way because there's lots of pieces of the puzzle. It's not easy to do. And then I can also, when I talk with firms, say, oh, they're at a place where they're pausing, they're putting more process in place so that they can grow, at a scale to grow. And then I also can hear firms that are starting to let go some of their smaller clients because they're bringing in larger clients, and they're thinking through how they're shifting their traditional book to more of an advisory book. So I think it's really great that you're bringing this to the discussion because firms are further along and thinking through how they can push it to the next level. I'd love to hear, though, what you are hearing about ways that they can push it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And your point around where firms are finding themselves, I think the first thing is to kind of plot yourself on where you are in that journey as a firm providing CAS, right? So we're talking about CAS 2.0, and we can talk about some of the fundamentals, elements, or pillars, as we've been calling them. But I also think there's a very important journey still happening with the category around optimizing CAS 1.0, right? If you have a 2.0, you should have a 1.0, and that's really thinking through. We're seeing a lot of firms right now who have defined CAS really as bookkeeping, accounting, some financial reporting and dashboards, and then controllership services. And then, some firms a little bit further along are starting to move in, introducing fractional CFO services on top of that, and moving more into that advisory. Sometimes those CFO services live in another practice area in the firm, and they're thinking through how those two can converge, and that really leads to the advisory opportunity. And so, as it relates to what are those key pillars that I think firms need to be looking at, the first is, identifying where you think you are in the journey. We have some great tools. CPA.com last year released a firm self-assessment tool. It's designed to do exactly that. It's for a firm, a cast leader, and a managing partner within a firm, or to go through that assessment and then identify where do they see things the same, where do they see some differences, and that starts a conversation. And the conversation internally about where the practice sits and where you want it to go is the first part of that. And typically within that conversation, you start identifying some key areas where you may have gaps or opportunities. One of those in particular we see is around alignment of the firm strategy and governance structure with the growth strategy, which ties to the compensation model, and then also the accountability of everyone in the firm to really invest and support CAS to achieve the goals. And so that's that first pillar of CAS 2.0. And then there's always evolving best practices around practice development. You and I over the years have presented several times on that topic. You've led a number of our workshops and have been involved there. And I think practice development is everything from having the right leadership, the right resources, the right processes, and the right pricing and scope service. So that's the second pillar of CAS 2.0. And then, we believe that any opportunity, business opportunity, is really driven by a business strategy that's going to transform a practice area, or that's going to introduce new value to clients. But then the technology is the enabler of that business strategy, and that's how you start to execute and really fulfill and recognize the potential of what could be. And so having just the consistency in the technology, knowing when to partner or when to try to do things yourself. So I think, one of the things we hear a lot about is firms struggling with capacity, and certainly Botkeeper has stepped in a very major way, helping with that back office capacity issue with firms. And that allows the firms to in turn then have a more defined technology strategy, I think, and then also focus and prioritize on practice strategy and upskilling their talent. The last pillar I'll just add on CAS 2.0, and we can come back and revisit these, is around operations. So as practices continue to build and grow, consistent workflow, processes, making sure that the product looks the same from one office to the next, that you've got really strong onboarding for clients, things like that also are really key.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to dig into. I mean, we don't have enough time. You said a lot. You hit a lot of the hot topics or areas that this isn't easy to build for the traditional firm. And so, there's so many steps to what you just said, where the technology fits, where the strategy is, how you price. But can we double down on the assessment? Because I love that you just talked about this tool that you have that I think is a great place to start on getting alignment with the firm and getting the managing partner and the cast lead or the other partners to align. So I want you to share a little bit more about that and how firms can go through that exercise with you, because I think that's key to get the foundation of where you're at and also where you're looking to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So invariably, any firm we talk to, depending on who you talk to and maybe even what day you talk to them, you're going to get different answers about how things are functioning within the firm. So the perspective from a managing partner or executive leadership, or even the line partner leadership over a practice area, down to the manager and staff level. If you talk to any one of those people, you could hear different levels of how are your processes going today? Are they managed processes? Are they scalable and repeatable? Are they efficient? And some may say, oh, absolutely, we have that in place. And you talk to someone else and they say, well, no, it's a little bit of a fire drill every time we have a new client come on board. And so I think with the firm assessment, what it starts to do is hone in and at least establish some clarity and level setting between the practice leader and the firm leadership. And depending on the size of the firm, those roles may vary and who would take it, but it starts to identify, okay, do we even see this practice as the same? Do we even endeavor or aspire to achieve the same goals here? Because without that, it becomes really difficult to put in place a winning business strategy that's going to move you forward. So that assessment tool, it actually creates a report. It's a pretty extensive report that starts to drill in and highlight some of those things. And then where we try to play a role with firms in that particular scenario is to step in and have a conversation, help facilitate that dialogue internally. So firms know what questions they should be asking, but they also start getting some ideas of how to address some of those things. Or, hey, in a perfect world, sometimes things are really working as well as everyone thinks they are, and it's how do we accelerate, right? So it also starts to lead the way for that, and in that those conversations can go a lot of different directions depending on where the firm wants to take the practice.
Yeah. So I think it's great that you have that. And then can you share with me more how you're seeing firms optimize on that 1.0? Because that's where a lot of firms have started, as they should. But, I think CPAcoms did a benchmark survey. You've done two. I think you're going to be rolling out a third this year, which is great that you're really sharing the success and the progression of CAS across firms. We are hearing about, 25 to 35% growth on firms that are building CAS. I think a lot of that, though, is the CAS 1.0. So can you share what you're seeing around this optimization of CAS 1.0 before we dive into more about what you're seeing around the next step, around the 2.0?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pandemic was an accelerant for the client demand around outsourcing their back office, right? So everything from day-to-day bookkeeping and AP, AR, expense management, many of the day-to-day functions, we've seen that accelerate. And we've also, at a time when firms are struggling to attract and retain talent in their firms, the capacity challenge for growth is one of the key challenges that we hear. And so from that perspective, optimizing CAS 1.0, I think, is really taking a look at how your processes are working. Are you focused on serving your ideal client profile? Are there some pruning of your clients you may need or to talk about? But if you look at CAS as a whole, there's some key learning curves that we've watched the trends over the years as firms have continued to enter into this space, but also continue on their journey. One of those learning curves, of course, is the practice strategy. And so that ties to some of the things we were talking about a little bit earlier as it relates to the service that's being provided, the service delivery model that's being used. And another is upskilling of talent. So as client demands increased for CAS, they're smart consumers. So they're also seeing the technologies that are out there for them. So things like dashboarding and budgeting and forecasting. And so not only are they looking to their CAS providers and advisors for information about the technology, but also the insights that technology delivers. So you also have a learning curve around moving towards more of a advisory mindset. We think those are two of the key learning curves firms should be focused on. And so in the other areas, I think optimization is about identifying when to partner. And so opportunities to partner are a great example. Again, I'll come back to the back office function.
Yeah.
If the clients are looking for more advisory and there's a learning curve there, I would say prioritize some of those learning curves and then look for opportunities to work with Botkeeper or other solutions or partners out there who may be able to help address that capacity issue at the same time.
I would agree. And that is our buyer. We fully focus on firms. And the number one thing we hear from firms that are starting to use Botkeeper is they want to move into advisory. They want to free up their talent from the mundane, time-consuming back office. No one wants to do that. The client doesn't want to do it. The firm bookkeepers actually don't really want to do that, right? No one wants to do that mundane. But everybody is telling us the reason that they're coming to Botkeeper is they want to free up their talent because they're at capacity, right, to be able to do the more profitable, more advisory work. Where they struggle, though, is their talent doesn't really know how to do that advisory work. So I agree with you, bringing in more technology that helps the talent be more analytical and advisory is key. But you have to make the time to then focus on, spending your time in these more profitable areas that firms are trying to build out. So how are you helping firms there with that that challenge, is getting their talent. Because to your point, Kalil, there's no lack of demand. The client is asking for this, and the client is savvy, and that is the client that will pay more for this type of advisory work. So it's a client you want to attract. So what are some strategies you're seeing firms as they're making that shift?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and absolutely, I think, like you said, the opportunity, the growth, the appetite by clients is not an issue out there. And so, first, I think one of the things we're doing is helping firms understand what does the talent look like to bring into the firms to drive this kind of practice forward, right? So it may look different than the traditional recruiting and hiring and career pathing that's been in traditional firm services like tax and audit, right? So one of the trends we're seeing is folks from business and industry, CPAs from business and industry, accounting majors from business and industry looking at public practice, and maybe they weren't interested in tax and audit originally, but the idea of being a business partner to clients and working on a specific niche or vertical, and in having that industry expertise, but also how to have a business conversation with clients that's not about compliance. It's not a perspective of an independent auditor who's looking at, forming an opinion on something. It's truly helping the businesses understand where they are in their life cycle and what does that mean for their industry, and then what should they be thinking about when they start planning, and whether it's high level workforce planning and other deep business insights related to the financial performance, but also the non-financial metrics around those businesses, or it's getting in and just understanding what the financials are telling them. Being a financial storyteller and honing in on the art of storytelling as a trusted advisor is a huge opportunity for firms. And there's tons of great resources out there, whether it's CPAcom and the AICPA, or it's others in the profession that are helping firms think through some of this. I'll tell you, one of the things that, as CAS starts to be the starting point of the conversation with firms, data is key, right? And so the firms that have the back office function and relationship with their clients, that sets up a foundation for a very different kind of conversation, because now it's not a conversation about what service do you need. It's a conversation about what should you be looking to do as part of your business strategy. And this is where the advisory part and the business insights parts of the conversation come in, is now if you have the accounting work being done, it's clean and it's quality, the natural course of the business conversation is going to be talking about things you may need to look at. If you're a service organization, should you be planning for a SOC report, or should you be thinking about, looking at cybersecurity, or should you be thinking about your business intelligence solutions or other technology capabilities that may benefit your business depending on where that client sits. And so one of the unique things that we think with CAS 2.0 is going to start to happen is all of these practice areas that are siloed out there. You've got the CFO for hire advisory practice, and then you've got the technology consulting practice, and then you have the client accounting services practice, and of course you have tax and audit and others. But right now, in the firms large enough that have all those practice areas, they say, yeah, we can provide those services to clients. But I think part of the strategy is turning that expertise internally. And what does that mean about building the offering that your clients are going to be asking for next? How do you anticipate what that should look like? And that's exactly what we're about, is helping enable that thinking and that execution.
Because I agree that sometimes it's all separate, and yes, the firm can do it, but how can they all work together? How can there be synergy with all these different teams in a way that the client is really hungry for? So there's so much that you said I think is so exciting. The opportunity for firms as they make this shift, is so exciting, because I think, to your point, it's thinking about bringing in different talent, and the talent this wants to do this work. The current talent might be trepidatious, but as you bring in these outside controllers into the firm and setting them loose on clients, they can upskill the rest of the team to get more comfortable about having these conversations about the data. Everything starts with the transaction. I truly believe what you just said. The firm needs to own the transactional work. They need to own the data. They have to make sure the data is accurate. You cannot do more for the client with bad numbers. So you can no longer let the client control the way it's done and how they do it and the tools they use. You have to take that over. You have to use the technology to integrate and automate so that it's seamless to have accurate data. The power is in the data. Once you get that data clean and accurate, that's when you can really start doing the interesting work with the clients. And so can you kind of share what you're seeing there? And like you spoke to some of it, but I'd love you to dig down even more, because that's what I think is the next step in the journey that you're seeing some firms successfully move towards. And they're charging a lot for this type of work, which is where the big profitability comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I alluded to it earlier. I think that, CAS, the accounting services portion of that, is very focused on good financial information hygiene, right? That's the underpinning. That's where everything needs to start. But as you start thinking about advisory and moving up towards more of a trusted business advisor, and starting to serve up value to clients differently about their business, industry specific guidance and insights, we call this the difference between financial CAS and business insights CAS. And business insights CAS really is that next rung of the ladder that starts unlocking those other discussions about ancillary or adjacent services that complement the existing client relationship. And so, great examples of that, if you look by vertical, hospitality, restaurants are a big vertical that a lot of CAS practices serve. But when you start not just looking at the financial information, but you start looking at the KPIs. So, what is their average check size? How quickly are they turning tables? What times a day are they more busy? And what are the delivery services doing to their business model? And how is that all impacting? All of a sudden, you start bringing together those data points, and not only are you getting a good financial forecast and budgeting process and window into the business differently, you're also seeing the operations of the business through a different lens. And when you start doing that, I think the conversation just moves much more strategically. And we could go industry by industry and talk about what those would look like, because they are different for each industry.
Yeah, I agree. Well, so we have about 5 minutes left. And what I learned when we were preparing for this chat is that CPAcom is doing more consulting and advising in this space. So I think it's fabulous, because obviously CPAcom has helped firms build this over the last 10 years, and moving into doing a lot more strategically is needed. So can you share what you're doing there with firms?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for asking. So we have had a workshop offering out in the marketplace for over 10 years. It has helped over 700 firms, over 1,500 people go through that workshop and understand what is CAS and what is the business model and how to build that. And so this is part of our practice development area. And we are taking that and we are just expanding that like crazy, right? So we are focused on identifying firms that are ready to have a conversation about CAS 2.0 and where to move their advisory practice, and understanding that business model and those 4 pillars, and how to strategically think through the issues and opportunities and recommendations in that regard. And then also firms who are trying to figure out if CAS is right for them, if this is a business that they want to invest in, because it is an investment like any new business. It looks different, it runs different, it's measured differently, and it's going to take executive level sponsorship, and not just the approval to yes, go start CAS, but really the support, saying we understand that your billable hours may not look the same, and we understand that you may need to staff before revenue and things like that, and we're there to help introducing. And then that optimized CAS 1.0, which I think is a majority of where these practices are. We're looking at stringing and helping firms go through that firm assessment process. Then we can help them understand what the right timing and who should be thinking about coming and getting educated about the business model. We've recently introduced some workshops around performing a client assessment on the front end of a CAS engagement. And we're doing all of this with practitioners, subject matter experts, folks that have been doing this for a long time, and they are able and very willing to just kind of talk through what these processes are. So we're thrilled to be playing that role for the profession, and know that it's a great complement to what the technology community is doing, and you know what partners like Botkeeper are doing for firms as this CAS category just continues to go to new heights.
That's right. Yeah, it's so needed, Kalil. And I've been hearing really good feedback about the client assessment workshop. That's one thing. As the prior facilitator of the CAS workshop, that was one thing that everybody would come out and saying, how do I do this client assessment? How are people charging to assess the client? But not only, I think how do you charge for a client assessment? It's like, how do you make sure that you're understanding the client before you start working with the client? It's so important. It's like I always say, when you take your car in to be fixed, they have to assess what's broken before they can tell you what the cost is to fix the car. And so having firms get more comfortable about assessing the client scenario to then be able to start assessing, and discussing how they can fix what's broken or not fix what's not broken, but make it better. So I've got great feedback about that workshop. And do you want to share some of how folks can find all of this at CPA.com?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is easy. It's CPA.com. So if you haven't been there, you can check it out, and you can reach out to us there, or you can reach out to me directly if you're listening and think that some of our conversation today was interesting. And the best way to do that is either through social media or through email. So my handle is @Kalil Merhib on Twitter or on LinkedIn. And then you can also reach me by email at kalil.merhib@hq.cpa.com. And I believe that's going to be in the chat here.
I'm going to put it in the chat. Yeah. And so, Kalil, as your parting thought, we've got 3 minutes. As your parting thought, what I did want to say is firms of all sizes can do this. It's not just for large firms. I mean, that's one thing I learned. Actually, smaller firms move faster. It's harder for the larger firms to put all the pieces together. But as a last thought, what would you like to share with the audience about, the shift that you're seeing that's happening and the opportunity out there if the firms really want to take advantage of building this new, I call it a new revenue source for the firm?
Yeah, things are moving very quickly, and that gets said over and over in any conversation that we talk about change in. Mm-hmm. But I think the profession is facing an opportunity right now, and it is time sensitive in terms of where the entry point to get into CAS is. So right now, there's still an opportunity to meet clients where they are and to work with them about getting them into the cloud and starting to establish that back office and transactional CAS support and service line right now. But at the same time, it's very quickly that the expectations will be that comes along with some controllership services or even further automation and business insights. And so, like anything, it's easier to take a smaller step first and then a bigger one. And so, I think as we move down the tracks here, the opportunity to start providing CAS is going to require a bigger step into CAS than what it is right now. And so, organizational change management, business strategy, having the right people, the right talent, thinking about their skill sets and thinking about, how do you incentivize everyone to have their oars in the water and rowing in the same direction when you make the decision to get into CAS. These are all key parts. And so what a great time to be in this category and thinking about things like this.
I agree. That's really well said. The opportunity is there for the taking. It's just putting a plan around it and starting to have action. So thank you so much, Kalil, for sharing your thoughts and all the great exciting things that CPAcom is starting to really help firms, dig in a little bit deeper to do this. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me, Deneen, and appreciate the time.
Take care. Bye, everybody.